Hello, Invisiblade here. I wanted to record going through all the settings that I have generally set by default. So this is a brand new account, and I thought I'd just go over everything I set. First, I always turn down music, especially for recording. Like that's a personal preference. But let's go over everything. First off, everything looks really small, so my first thing I like to do, set the text size to large. Not just so much for menus, because menus I could deal with. It's for in-game that I set text size to large so that the kill feed is bigger. Let's see. It's been a long time since I've actually gone through, so hopefully this helps somebody if you're wondering what settings to use. This actually defaults to salmon or vermilion. I forget which. I've used cotton candy for a long time on one monitor because the pineapple didn't work very well, but I recently got a new monitor. It's much better. So I'm using pineapple now. And then as for friendly, I keep it sky. Um, if they're in my fire team, I like them to be green. Again, those are personal preferences. I've seen a lot of different color combos. Um, reticle outline thickness, opacity, and HUD opacity. I like to turn up all the way. Disable visual distractions. I don't turn those on. Blur, I set to 1%. Thanks to Eli the Ninja, he said that his optimization guy found that if you have blur off at 0, it actually can screw thing or lower your performance more than if you have it at 1%. It improves performance enough to actually make it worthwhile. I haven't personally tested that, but I'm using it anyway. I just like to set sharpening to 99%, although that was with my old monitor. With the new one, it might be okay to be at 100, but at 100, it caused some weirdness, so I set it to 99 and it cleaned things up, so I use 99. But none of that's really all that important except for right here. So blur, screen shake, definitely turn off. Exposure, turn off. Full screen effects, turn off. Speed lines, turn off. They're all just distractions that aren't really helpful. So yeah, I think everything else in here is fine. Now on gameplay, HUD opacity is maxed. I don't need tips anymore. Text chat I can leave on. All that's just default, whatever. This hold and release for the multiplayer scoreboard. I like FPS and network statistics I turned on. I already had. I tried to reset everything, but apparently that didn't reset either. Enemy UI again, pineapple. These are all maxed out. These are mirrored in accessibility. For some reason they have it in two places, but that's okay. Show enemy names so that you can call out their names to your teammates. Turn these three effects off that makes your HUD move around and look shiny and stuff. Like it's again just more distraction. All the observer stuff doesn't really matter because I'm not an observer. Weapon offsets. So I set everything these days to negative 100, negative 100, 100. Um, there we go. And last one. Cool. Audio. Main, I tend to actually play with that at 8 just for my setup, but that you can change on your own. Voice, I leave up because I actually prefer the audio cues of like flag has been taken or rockets are available or whatever, the AI says. It can get annoying at times. I know there are some pros that turn that off all the way. But I find for me at least, it's just extra cues, and so I leave that on. Sound effects you leave on. Environmental effects, I turn that one off. Hit detection, I leave it at 8. Inactive mute, this is whether or not you're swapping between screens. I don't tend to do that very often. Dynamic, I use compressed. All of this should just be actually not default anymore. I set that to, oh, I just recently changed this. But more importantly, I like to set the line to be highlighted so it's easier to read. It's not a huge deal, again, because the subtitles is kind of just repeating what the AI is saying, but a lot of times the AI does say something handy like dynamo grenades acquired, right? So I do kind of use that as just another cue to help me keep track of everything, especially for ranked. If it's not ranked, I don't care as much, but um, this is fine. Voice chat mode, I generally have that set to 8 for the incoming, and then this is either on or off, open mic or disabled. Spartan chatter, you definitely want on. because that will be like the other Spartans saying active camo on the field or something like that, right? So it's handy. On the video, I play 105. I'm surprised this actually kept this. This is from my other account. So I keep 105. Resolution, I turn all the way down. Your min frame rate, if you use that, what this does is this, in order to stay at the whatever minimum you have set, it changes your resolution scale. Now, I already have it minimized, so I don't know if it can go lower than this. But if you don't, if you play at 1920 by 1080, which is the default here, if I can land on it, whatever. Oh, there we go. And if you have the set to say 120, in my case, I run an old graphics card, right? But it will dynamically adjust your resolution as it needs to keep that minimum frame rate. So I just turn that all the way down anyway and have this off. Um, Again, to each their own on how they want to play. This way I can maintain 120 frames. It can run a little faster, but it does end up using 100% CPU, and it will dip down as low as I think like 131. So I play with 120 to give me some headroom, and it really never dips. I mean, it'll still hit 119 here and there, but that's because it's Halo is Halo. VSync off for input lag. Limit interactive frame rate if you're not on the screen. Again, I don't swap out of Halo very often. Again, all of these are still saved from before, so it seems like only these were reset with a different account. But I will show you how I get to mine. So I set everything to low to start with. Um, Reflections turn off, and volumetric fog quality turn off, and effects set to medium actually, because otherwise you don't see dynamo grenade electricity. And then simulation quality, set that to ultra. Flocking quality, which is like the animals on the maps, I just turn those off. And then animation quality, this one I'm actually going back and forth trying to figure out. It shouldn't matter with my CPU. I've got a 7950X, which is currently the top end AMD CPU. But there could be some issues if you set it to max and not let it do auto. So I've been trying to figure out which one's better. I don't know if it matters too much, but of course I don't have ray tracing. And again, these are all mirrored over in accessibility. I don't play keyboard and mouse. And let's see if my controller is set up correctly. It is not. Okay, so the controller did get um, changed, which, oh boy. Because I use an Elite with paddles, my controls are way different. So I think the way I originally set this up was, oh, nope, not that one. Legacy? Nope. I actually don't know. It has been so long, and I just changed individual ones. It's Helljumper. Okay, so Helljumper is the one I default with. This was called Green Thumb in the older Halos, where your melee is the right thumbstick, and I still do that to this day. I can't get rid of that muscle memory, or at least I'm not going to try hard enough to. Thumbstick layouts all default for me. I don't have vibration. I don't play inverted. I do hold the crouch. I don't hold the zoom. I do hold the sprint. That I turn on, even though it shouldn't. I don't play a lot of big team. Well, it's for big team battles. It's not important for ranked. Maintain sprint on, auto clamber off, step jump on. Look acceleration. This changes fairly frequently, but right now it's kind of low because I got really rusty and I have a new controller that, or at least newer to how I used to play. My old settings were 4, and then depending on the day, would either be 5, 6, or 6, 6.5. But then I didn't play for a few months, got really rusty, came back, and now I like a lower sense. Although I did hear that sense changed somewhere a little bit. So right now my current is 3, 3.5, 6. I still like the higher sensitivity vertically for 2 reasons. One, a lot of tests that have come out on vertical in Halo, or at least in Halo Infinite, that the vertical sensitivity is not as fast as your horizontal. So having the set to 6 is more similar to having it at 3, because I think it's about a 2-to-1 ratio. But more importantly, like as you're falling and there's a person in front of you just sitting on the ground, if you want to keep your crosshair on them as you're falling, if your sensitivity is too low, say this was down to 4, you can't because your maximum movement up as you're trying to keep your crosshair on them doesn't work. And then also being higher, I can look down at the ground to toss a grenade to bounce, and then look back up quicker. So, and that doesn't throw me off at 6 vertical. But having this, if I'm really really warmed up, I can turn this up a little bit. But right now, this is my current settings. Zoom level, these I all set to, I think it's 1.2 these days. I don't play with this too much generally. If it feels a little too off, I'll change it. But I think 1.2 is generally where I just kind of let it sit. Dead zones, I like them all the way down. These dead zones. So on my move, this was an old way of doing it. You'd set center to 0, axial to 0, go in, see how much stick drift you got, and then turn your axial up until you no longer had stick drift. Now, technically, you can still do that, right? But what I found, axial dead zone is the plus. So as you go further to the right, you still have a gap that you can move up and down a little bit. Or if you're going up, you can move left to right just a little bit and still have it just be perfectly vertical as input with the axial dead zone. For my movement, I actually prefer to be able to more control that. I guess I should use the right thumbstick here, or left thumbstick. So if I want to go forward and a little bit to the right, I want to be able to put my thumbstick off just a little bit. And it's very rare I want to move exactly perfectly straight forward. If I'm going left or right just a little bit on movement, that's really, really handy. So I set my axial dead zone to 0, and I actually use the center dead zone, which just looks right at the center of your joystick. So once you get past that center point, with axial dead zone down to 0, it's very minimal. Technically 0 isn't 0. There's still a little bit. But so when I move forward or backwards and I'm trying to move, right, I'm rarely running in a straight line because I don't want to run in a straight line and have enemies shooting at me in a straight line. So I use center dead zone. I think with my current controller, it was 2.5. I might have to play with that a little bit as I'm in game. And then max input threshold, I like to move as fast as possible, so I use 15. Look thumbstick is the other way around. I don't actually. I do set center dead zone to 0.5 just to get it a little more rounded, and then I use my axial dead zone, which I believe is currently also 2.5, might be 3, to get rid of the stick drift. That way, as I try to move left and right with my crosshair, I'm not going up or down as I'm trying to go left to right as much, or if I'm trying to go up and down, I'm not going left to right. So the axial is more important to me for the look thumbstick than the center. And then this one, I was at 0, but I recently changed this. I think it was just a 0.5. Dang, I might have to switch accounts to look. Um, again, I want more control, so I don't want it to go maximum sensitivity right away. So I have this set out to the outer edge with the input threshold. And then as for my other, jump is actually going to be A, which is set to a paddle. Crouch, I think that is correct. Yeah, that's correct. Again, that's another paddle. Sprint, that is a paddle. And I actually don't know why it's not letting me bind it. Cool. So that's on a paddle. It's just down on the D-pad. But again, I use a paddle. Fire weapons, right trigger. Use equipment, X. Melee is right thumbstick. Again, old habits die hard. Throw grenade actually needs to be left trigger for me. Reload is X. Use equipment. Sorry, wrong one. That is RB. Now, it used to be LB, but I recently changed that. So I'm still kind of getting used to that. Drop weapon, I do bind it. I don't do the drop weapon mechanic. I never got good at that anyway. But if I want to drop a weapon holding Y, I prefer to just press B. That's the only time I press it, like if I'm tossing a sniper off the map or whatever. Zoom is left bumper. Zoom level I don't set. AI scan is left. D-pad, which is legit. Mark is up, and again, that's a paddle. So I set mark as a paddle, I set sprint as a paddle, jump as a paddle, and crouch as a paddle. So I've got 4 of them. And then vehicles, I don't think I ever changed anything there. Switch equipment doesn't apply, other than it needs to be not that. Switch grenades is the right one. That way I can still move around and swap grenades with my right thumb, or I can be aiming and switch grenades with my left thumb really easily, because pressing the left thumbstick actually is a little harder because I have to reach further with my right thumb or come down straight more with my left thumb. And so I find for me, the left direction is a little harder to press. So I use that as the AI scan because I'm not going to AI scan unless I'm not even close to getting in a fight, right? And I'm looking for like the rockets on the ground or whatever. So I use that as the left and then the right because that angle here is very natural for my thumb to move in, just that arch because it kind of arches over. And then my right thumbstick or my right thumb can get off the thumbstick and press it as well. So if I want to switch grenades, it's either thumb can easily get to it. Um, None of the theater stuff really matters. Tac maps don't do anything with that. So yeah, that is all of my settings. And again, some of them kind of change, but and your controller is going to be very custom to you, so I wouldn't look too much into a lot of that. It's more like turning off your screen shake and things like that that matter. But that's all I've got for this video.